You can begin.
Okay. Good morning. Long before I served on the Budget Committee, I got a crash course in Budgeting 101 as a single working mom. In those years, raising 3 children on a nurse's salary taught me to live within my means and stretch my dollars, and frankly, I didn't have much of a choice. Unfortunately, that concept is lost for many here in Washington. For example, the president's latest budget would never balance, despite the fact that it's calling for $2 trillion in new taxes. House Republicans believe that we can do better. And that's why this week, the House will vote on a balanced budget for a stronger America. Our plan brings our books to balance in less than 10 years without raising taxes. Importantly for me as a nurse, this budget would also fully repeal Obamacare and giving us an opportunity to start over on health care reforms that put patients and their doctors in charge, not Washington bureaucrats. Families and businesses know what it's like to live within the real world of budgeting, and we believe it's time that Washington learn to do the same.
The president's health care law is 5 years old, and while it isn't cute like a real 5-year-old, it is clumsy, way more expensive than we'd hoped, and we need to keep it under close supervision or it's likely to cause a lot of destruction. Americans need a health care law built on their priorities, not those dictated from Washington and on the whims of an executive who is inclined to overreach. 5 years of increased cost and wasteful bureaucratic problems is simply far too long. That is why the House has put forward a responsible budget that completely repeals the president's disastrous health care law in full, including all of its tax increases, all the regulations, and all the mandates. Our budget paves the way for a better alternative, empowers Americans by letting you choose the health care plan that fits your needs and by reducing costs and improving access through choice and competition.
As Lynn just noted, this week marks the 5-year anniversary of the president's health care law. And despite the promises, 5 years later, this legislation has not delivered what was promised. I wanted just to read some words from different corners of the country, voices that I believe deserve to be heard. A woman from Georgia writes, "I'm a 62-year-old widow and only make $8.79 an hour. I lost my insurance and cannot afford to pay for it." A man from Pennsylvania says, "My family's health coverage was canceled, and my new health care premiums increased 85% thanks to Obamacare." A husband from California writes, "Our health care costs were affordable until this law came along. Now the increase in cost puts a serious hurt on our budget." And a young man, family from my home state in Washington, was overbilled by the state exchange and for 3 days didn't have the money they needed for food, gas, or medicine. You know, the people are different, but the stories are repeated all across the country. Obamacare has made lives worse. And that's why our balanced budget for a stronger America is so important. We're bringing it to the floor this week. It repeals Obamacare and it makes government accountable to you. American families all across this country balance their money to pay the bills. They afford, so that they can afford the co-pays at the doctor's office and send their kids to school. Families have to prioritize. They have to save. They have to live within their means. The federal government needs to do likewise.
This is an important week in the House as we get ready to pass a budget tomorrow and then also move forward and completely repeal the SGR on Thursday, while also putting in place mandatory spending reforms that we haven't seen in decades, reforms that will actually strengthen Medicare for seniors. And if you look at our budget, it's not only an important vision document that lays out our priorities and our plans to get our country back on a path to a balanced budget, as well as the kind of economic reforms that are needed to get hardworking taxpayers the relief they need from a heavy-handed federal government, and also to get our economy back on track. But there's something else that is in our budget that's very important to how things work today in Washington, and that is the reconciliation process that allows us to send a repeal of Obamacare to President Obama's desk with 51 votes in the Senate. And as we look at the 5-year anniversary yesterday of Obamacare and how it's devastated families, how it's caused millions of people across this country to lose the good health care that they have while facing higher costs and fewer doctors to choose from. American people know how devastating that law is. And so the strength of having a budget that lays out those priorities to tackle real problems that our country's facing, get our budget balanced again, get our economy moving again, and also set the stage for a repeal of Obamacare and the ability to actually replace it with patient-centered reforms.
There's a lot that happens in this House that shows contrast, but there's no greater contrast than this week. A budget is your vision. It's your desire for the future. But it shows a contrast between Republicans and Democrats. There'll be a lot of budgets on the floor, from Progressive, CBC, RSC, and others. But only one final budget will pass. That budget balances. That budget doesn't have tax increases. That's the difference between Republican budget, the president's budget, and the Democrats. Theirs has tax increases, and theirs never balances. We believe in a future for this country, and we believe it could even be better than today.
Well, this is a big week for the House's focus on the people's priorities. We're going to be considering a balanced budget that helps create more jobs, strengthens our economy, frankly, from the ground up. A stark contrast to the president's budget, which never balances, full of tax increases and a lot more spending. We're also going to act this week to strengthen Medicare and make the first real structural entitlement reforms in nearly 2 decades. For Washington, this means the end of the doc fix. For seniors, it means a stronger Medicare system and better health care. And for taxpayers, it means real savings.
Mr. Speaker, there are reports, Wall Street Journal says that Israel was leaking information to Congress to derail a prospective deal with Iran. Did they tell you anything? Do you have any concerns?
I read that story this morning, and frankly, I was a bit shocked because there's no information revealed to me whatsoever.
This question is actually for Mr. Scalise. Oh, wonderful. The Speaker and Leader and you all said this is a very big week here. We have 2 big issues on the docket, but we've had some unsteady votes in the past time since you've been whip when it's come to getting the whip count here. Do you feel more confident in making sure on SGR and on the budget that the votes are there? And have you changed anything to kind of preserve how your whip operation is so this goes a little more smoothly?
I've never been off on the floor. We're whipping the SGR vote today, so we're going to have a whip on the floor today for the SGR vote that we'll have on Thursday, and we're continuing to work through questions that members have on the budget. But frankly, our members have actually been coming together, and the agreement that was reached last week between Chairman Price and Chairman Thornberry to represent the bond between our fiscal and defense hawks so that we could bring a budget forward to the floor that actually satisfied the requests of both sides of our conference to bring them together is going to be a very important moment for our conference that, again, budget's always a visionary document, but it's also a unifying document. I think you're going to see a very unified House Republican conference on the floor Wednesday when we pass that budget and send it over to the Senate.
Thank you.
Why would you wear socks that look like that? How about the circus was coming to town or something?
They're actually here, President.
Well, you better go catch up with the elephants. We have more questions.
Wow.
Well, that's nice.
You were shocked by the reports about Israel's spying possibly, but if it's true...
I was shocked by the fact that there were reports in this press article that information was being passed on from the Israelis to members of Congress. I'm not aware of that at all.
Would it have been inappropriate if they didn't?
I'm not sure what the information was, but I'm baffled by it.
And Mr. Speaker, given the disagreement between Pelosi and Reid and Senate Democrats on the doc fix, are you confident that you're fine with it and it'll pass and be able to pass Congress?
Yeah, I feel good about where we are with the doc fix, and I have to say that the conversations that Mrs. Pelosi and I have had now for the last 2.5 months have been productive. They've been open. They've been honest. And while a lot of people wanted to weigh in from the other body and frankly from our own body, we've done a pretty good job of crafting, I think, a very solid package. And I should make clear that we have no intentions of passing any kind of a short-term doc fix. We've got a good product. We're going to pass it here on Thursday, and I hope the Senate will move it as quickly as possible.
Last question.
Mr. Speaker, any reaction to Senator Ted Cruz jumping into the presidential race yesterday? He's painting himself as an alternative.
I have a real job to do right here. Yes.
Could you talk about, you're doing something a little bit unusual with the two budgets that you're going to put on the floor. Could you talk about that, which budget you favor personally?
I believe in the higher OCO numbers, the budget that will pass. I think the way we're considering all of these budgets, both Democrat and Republican budgets, is frankly the most democratic, small d, way you can consider this. You know, the budget alternative that gets the most votes is what goes to final passage. And I think that's a great way to do it. Jonathan?
What do you make of Senator Reid's opposition to the SGR? What do you think he's up to, and what does it say about the relationship between the two bodies and the two Democratic leaders?
Well, I don't know that there is great opposition, at least not that I'm aware of. He may have some concerns.
Much opposed.
We'll see. Thanks.